everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. Back to the program. Chief Johnson Chukwu is with me right now. He's joining us virtually. Chief Chukwu, welcome to the program. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Chief. Hi, Chief Nancy.
All right, welcome. I don't think that this our discussion will be that of smiling, but like they say, let's just add in some spice. It's the beginning of the week. We shouldn't all begin with gloomy faces. Mr. Chukwu, is the economy really improving, as the government is saying? And I would like you to answer that. Let's play this video by a UCOM member. I saw that video on TikTok. In fact, when it broke, the young lady was lamenting. So I would like us to begin with that. We'll come back when we take the video.
I genuinely feel so overwhelmed, and I feel like if a lot of Nigerians come out and start speaking on what we are actually going through, then maybe changes will be made in the government. Don't you guys think? And this video, I just want to say to our president, I don't know if there have been any other president that is terrible, but you are such a terrible president. It is so hard. So I'm coming from the supermarket where I went to get foodstuffs, and everything has gone up again. It's just like every single week prices increase. I want to know, what is the government doing about this increment? Is there going to be a particular time where prices will stop going up? Is there going to be a particular time where things are going to go back? Guys, why am I going to get a crate of egg and they're telling me it is 6.5? It doesn't make any sense that egg will cost 6.5. Like, I literally can't remember when egg used to cost 800. And I'm so overwhelmed because this is literally my first time doing this adulthood thing alone. This is my first time moving out of my family house. This is my first time living by myself. And not just that, after I left the supermarket and I got home, my security is bringing NEPA bill, and NEPA bill has gone up by 2 times. Like, it's insane. I can't keep up with these bills. I am so overwhelmed and I'm so exhausted.
Mr. Chukwu, you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
So what is your view about what she said? She raised a lot of issues there. Cost of living crisis still high, even though my correspondents went to the field and we found out that a few commodities are coming down, of course, understandably so because of the harvest season, but she raised a lot of issues there. And the other thing that I'm also hearing is that, of course, even from her, is that NYSC, an official allegedly from the NYSC, is threatening her to take that video down. So this is a young lady that is supposed to be earning 70, I think, is it 70,000 naira that the federal government said it will pay the coppers, or 77. And since the federal government promised them, they haven't paid that amount till now as I speak. So many issues there. How do you dissect all of this?
Well, Nancy, I think the young lady spoke truth to power, and I think it's for government to take that as input and look at how do we ameliorate the suffering of Nigerians. Like you said, the youth coppers are supposed to be earning 77,000 naira a month. And she was talking about a crate of egg for 6,000 naira. A bag of rice is more than 77,000 naira. And there is no way an average household can live on 77,000 naira a month. Even the coppers commuting from where they live to where they are supposed to be doing their place of primary assignment, we take almost 77,000 naira. Nancy, if people that live in Ikeja, for instance, in Lagos, and come to work in the island, assuming a copper stays in Ikeja and comes to work in the island, in a month, between 2 days work week in a month, will completely take away the 77,000 naira, assuming they have even started paying them. So the reality is that a lot of Nigerians are under pressure, under economic pressure. And there's no denying that fact. I think anybody asking her to take it down is just playing the ostrich. Even those who are asking her to take it down, I'm not sure they are enjoying very good economic condition on their own. So reality is that even if you say some food prices have moderated marginally, but if you take a general view of where we are today, inflation in the month of January was 24.48, based on NBS-based method of computing the inflation figure. And that was using 2024 as a base year. The average price in 2024. Average price in 2024 was in the region of 32, 33%. So if you say 32%, so it then means average prices increased by 32% last year. And then you are talking about another increase of 24% or 25% in January, which means your expenditure on average has increased by something like 58%, 60% between January last year and January this year. So your income must have increased by that same magnitude for you to maintain the standard of living you are living in 2023. And like the young lady said, this is the first time she's leaving her family home to be on her own. It is something when we were young, Nancy, when I graduated, it's something we all looked up to, we all looked forward to, that we wanted to be on our own. And at 24, I was already working in a bank. But even when I was serving, I was able to even save money, though our allowance then was much lower than what it is today. But in terms of the value of what he could command, it was 10 times what the value of current allowances can command. That's what has happened to everybody who is earning salary or who is on wages. And that's what we have to recognize. So the government acting through NYSC or whoever to ask her to pull down that video is just playing the outreach. We should recognize Nigerians are going through difficult times. And the purpose of even having MPS give us reports on inflation is for us, government, to know where it is hurting Nigerians. And if we do not address that, we are going to see a situation when the citizens will continue to suffer, standard of living continue to deteriorate. And that's part of what is contributing to social issues we have in the country.
So if MBS is telling us something else, and a lot of people are now beginning to doubt the credibility of the MBS, that is a discussion for another day because of the figures that it's bringing out. The other question is, if you listen to government officials, Cardoso, I think a few days ago, did say, okay, things are improving. Wale Adu, the Minister of Finance, coordinator of the economy, will say, okay, things are improving. You listen to them. Even when I speak with them, they're like, Nancy, calm down. This thing is improving. You know, things are improving. They talk to press people in the villa. Things are improving. The question is, in your own assessment, is this growth indicative of a genuine economic recovery, or does it mask underlying challenges, as the young lady has mentioned? I had an experience last week. I was speaking to a young lady who is now a member of my team, and she spoke to me. Even while she was speaking, she did say, oh, that she mentioned to me in passing, but I took it. She said that she doesn't want her parents anymore to support her financially, that they've been doing that for a while, and she doesn't want that anymore. What does that indicate? That there are a lot of people that after you train your children in school and all of that, you just said you had a job at 24 in a bank. Not majority of Nigerians don't have that luxury right now. So you will train your children, they will come out of school, now you go look for a house for them, you will still be giving them pocket money, you will go and look for a job, you will be carrying their CVs around to look for jobs for them. So at what point do we now have a break? Just like the young lady said, that at what point do we now see prices will even come down finally or permanently, and we'll begin to live within our means?
Okay, you're giving me a very complex task, but let me try to break it down. In terms of, starting from the first part of the question, are things improving? And I would say that the answer should be contextual, should be put in proper context. If you use economic data, you could say, you give an impression on improvement in economic data. And I'll give you an instance. For instance, the NBS said that the inflation rate in December was 34.84% or thereabout. And then the inflation figure in January was 24.48%. So if you look at that, you contrast 34.8% against 24.48%, and you say inflation has dropped. But bear in mind that this is economic data, and that they use a different base. Two, if you look at the GDP figure for the last quarter of last year, you say the GDP grew at about 3.84%. And then overall year on year, full year 2024, 3.4%. You can contrast that with about 2.7, I think 2.79 or 2.78, 2.79% it grew in 2023. And you say the GDP is growing. But when you now break down that GDP growth rate, and you realize agriculture, which account for about 24.8% of the GDP, call it an average of 25%, grew at only 1.19%. Population is growing about 2.4%. Population is growing at twice the rate at which agriculture is growing. So you certainly will have to witness food insecurity in the country. And that's why, and that's what hurts most. And if you even take this to the figures announced by NBS, where they have rebased the GDP, the inflation figures, and they now use a weight of 40% for food. So if the fact that 40% of your expenditure is food, and food prices have gone up, and your income has not gone up as much as the increase in food prices, simply means your standard of living will deteriorate, unless you are 1% of the population. That's people like you. So if you look at the sectors of the economy, and you look at manufacturing sector, which accounts for about 8% of the GDP, it grew at just about 1.3%, 1.38%. You look at trade sector accounts for about 15% of the GDP, it grew at 0.9%. So you ask yourself, which sector is actually growing? Even telecommunications growth is slowing down. It grew about 5.4%. They count for about 18% of the GDP today. So if you now decompose it, you now see you're looking at a ballpark figure, and they give you an impression of some improvement. But what hurts Nigerians are, can they feed well? Starting from that. And then they cannot guarantee where the next meal will come from. Then you look at, have their income improved better than the level of increase in prices? The income is still lagging behind increase in food prices. And ultimately, the Constitution says that the primary objective of the government is to improve the welfare and security of the citizens. If that is not improving, then the government has to rethink its strategy. It's good that we've implemented some reforms. Those reforms are critically and absolutely necessary. But we also must make sure that we put some counterbalancing measures to protect the most vulnerable in the society, so that you do not create an economy that you don't have anybody that will get the benefit. I mean, what I'm saying is that the most vulnerable would have all died off before they begin to see that benefit.
Mr. Chukwu, assuming you are the finance minister now, and from all indications from what you've said, you support, of course, the economic reforms, but perhaps the modality as to how the government did it is what you're opposing. So assuming you're the finance minister, how can you balance the necessary economic reforms, which is being touted by this administration, with immediate needs of citizens struggling with high cost of living? Talk to me about how you're going to balance it. Give me two things perhaps you're going to do, assuming you're finance minister today.
Okay, the first thing I would have done if I was a finance minister at the onset of this government is that I would make sure that we do not have two variables moving uncontrollable. One was adjustment in the fuel prices, or what they call deregulation of the price of petroleum products, and at the same time deregulating the exchange rate. I would have made sure that one variable is kept relatively stable while I deal with the other variable. One of which that while you adjust the price of fuel by removing the subsidy, we should have maintained the exchange rate around that 750. But what happened was the exchange rate also shifted, and therefore price of fuel moved from about 580, which is where the removal of subsidy took it to over 1,000 naira, and that completely disrupted everything about the economy. So you can't have all the variables moving at the same time. So the key thing is that you must face your reforms, and I think that's what did not happen. The reforms were not faced, and therefore too many variables went into the air and became unmanageable. And the impact is that we saw a runaway inflation rate. We saw a decline in employment rate, despite what MBS is saying. We saw a drastic worsening of standard of living of citizens. And I think that's what went wrong. The two reforms were necessary, but they should have been staggered. They should have been phased so that one impact is monitored. And then when we have a control of it, the other variable is also adjusted.
So you would have preferred that the FX reform would have been, swayed a bit, just hold their fire on it a bit. But would the CBN have had enough firepower to be able to, defend the Naira? Because that was what it was doing. It's still defending it though now, but perhaps not at the pace it was then.
Nancy, a couple of mistakes were made, but I don't want to.
Yes, go into all of that. Yes.
Thinking about all the things that went wrong. In the first place, the first thing, if you wanted to reform your foreign exchange rule policy that you have, that mentioned the level of negative position you have, and then taking measures to close that. We could have approached IMF at that point, gotten support, and I've said this separately in your program.
IMF.
And yes,
because we are not on any IMF program. And you know what comes with IMF. I had the first and exclusive interview with the IMF deputy chief when she came in just a few days ago into Abuja, and I asked her that question, that is Nigeria seeking an IMF program? She told me clearly not. And you know that Nigerians don't want to hear IMF. In fact, the way we are now, we are not on an IMF program, but Nigerians are saying that we are adopting what IMF and World Bank is saying.
No, Nancy, sometimes when we say these things, we actually get emotional about IMF. They are support mechanism that IMF would have approached. And what they would have asked us to do is to take out the subsidy. The condition IMF would have given Nigeria is take out the subsidy. And if we are taking out the subsidy and aligned with some IMF conditionalities, Nigeria would have cried the blue mother. That is IMF that imposed this pain on us. You see, you cannot float your currency if you do not have a support for it. And that's the reality of the country, of any economy. No country allows its currency to float if you don't have the reserve to intervene in that currency. There's no currency in the world that is free floating. It doesn't exist. The British pound is supported by the Bank of England. The US dollar is supported by Federal Reserve Bank. The Canadian dollar is supported by the Bank of Canada. There's no, so you really can't come and tell anybody that understand the basic economics and say we floated the currency and then we allowed it to find its level. It will never find its level. Which level? It has to. Then if it becomes a commodity, it has to be subject to demand and supply. So if there's no supply, what happens to the price? So the reality is that, like I said, simple thing would have faced the reforms, take out the subsidy first, then deal with supply. Remember, Nancy, the truth is that when you take out the subsidy, demand would drop. And we have to recognize the fact, even when it was done, the exchange rate, the price of fuel at the time subsidy was removed was indexed to 750 naira per liter. Dollar. 750 naira per dollar. At that point, dollar had not even gotten to 750 naira. The parallel market was 750 naira at that point. So the parallel market, so if you had allowed naira to only adjust to 750 naira and make sure that you traded within that band, you would have had stability in the economy today. You would have had Nigerians' household income adjust with that increase in minimum wage, would have adjusted sufficiently to allow Nigerians enjoy the same standard of living they were enjoying before the advent of the current administration.
Now, President Tinubu's 2025 budget, of course, he signed it and all of that. But I want to ask you a question around, because I know it's almost like a yearly ritual. For some of us, we may have gotten tired of it, because if we talk about budget implementation, we always point it. How do you think that this government can ensure better execution of the 54.9 trillion naira budget to achieve its economic objectives while facing significant gaps in revenue as well as expenditure? Mr. Chukwu, are you still there?
Yes, Nancy, I'm here.
Okay, so please answer that.
Well, in the first place, I have my issues. It's not my issues. I question the revenue assumptions on the budget. And if you have an overly optimistic revenue projection, and then you build your expenditure based on unrealizable or unrealistic revenue projections, it becomes difficult to implement the budget the way it is. The budget can be implemented if there are material changes in the borrowing profile of the government. The budgeted borrowing about 13 trillion. And I give you an instance. Nancy, the government has budgeted that it will produce 2.06 million barrels of crude daily. We are currently producing about 1.5 or 1.54.
Without condensate.
Yeah, without condensate. But if you look at the MBS figure for 2024 fourth quarter, average crude production was 1.54 million barrels a day, and that includes condensate, because what the MBS report includes condensate. So even if you add condensate today, you may be doing about 1.5, 1.6 million barrels a day. It's a far cry from 2.06 million barrels a day. As at this morning, crude price was trading and Brent was trading about $71.
$71,
You are budgeting $75. And even while doing that budget, you know Trump had won the election. Trump was going to push for a reduction in crude prices. And Trump is going to disrupt OPEC Plus. And already that is happening. OPEC Plus is already saying that by April, they will allow for additional crude to come into the market. So you may see crude trading below $70. So if you have a budget estimate that is based on assumption that you know are not realistic, then what you have actually projected, you are going to borrow beyond what you have estimated in that budget, and that will further spike debt service. It could actually spike, depending on the source of borrowing, it could actually spike liquidity in the economy, drive up inflation rates, and drive up pressures on exchange rates. So how would the government implement this budget? The first thing I ask is that, do we plan to borrow more? Or do we plan to borrow beyond what we have in the estimate? In terms of government expenditure, bear in mind that year in, year out, government almost always meets the expenditure projections because it has a central bank that will always provide that cover. And that's what we will end up with this year. So budget can be implemented, expenditure can be implemented, but something we give in, and that would be that the borrowing as presented in the budget will be far as short by the actual amount that will be borrowed by the government.
Mr. Chukwu, I just want you to use 45 seconds to address this issue again, and let me go back, and that points to the seriousness of this issue. Of course, our stagflation issues, but around the cost of living. I know we talked about it earlier, but I would like you to perhaps mention one thing that the government can do, actionable steps to be able to ease inflation, especially in the area of food and transportation, because that is where Nigerians are really feeling the brunt right now. What can be done? 45 seconds. Then I go to another question.
Okay, we are counting 45 seconds. One, government must improve insecurity in the northern regions of the country to improve food production. Two, government must drive the improvement in crude production to stabilize the exchange and possibly allow Naira to appreciate. That will reduce the cost of fuel, reduce the cost of transportation. I hope I work with it for 5 seconds.
Yes, you still have about 15 seconds to go. Is that, okay, I wanted to ask a question around transportation, but I'm not the government spokesperson, and I'm assuming they will tell me this. Around transportation, they say, hey, Nancy, CNG now, we are rolling out CNG. But are there other critical things that they need to do around transportation?
Nancy, the reality is, the other thing
or
they could
states,
do,
actually, because sometimes we are talking about federal government all the time. How about states?
Yeah, you know, Nancy, a lot of macroeconomic policies are dependent on the federal government.
Yeah.
The other factor they can do to bring down transportation is to reduce drastically the tariff on imported vehicles. I think duty on imported vehicles is in the region of 100%, which makes the cost of any vehicle you buy here almost twice what you would have bought elsewhere in the world. So if you reduce the tariff on imported vehicles, you're going to reduce the cost of bringing those goods in, reduce the cost of the spare parts, and then the cost of, when you have more vehicles, the cost of transportation will reduce. I've spoken about the need to reduce the price of fuel by having stronger exchange rates if we improve our crude oil production and export.
Okay, the banks recapitalization exercise process still ongoing within the banks. It's now a year to 2026. We expect the banks, because that announcement was done last year. CBN's Cardoso announcing that the banks have 2 years to recapitalize. What do you think about the ongoing process so far? Someone, you interact with these banks, perhaps they also use your company for some of the issuings that they've done. How do you assess the bank's recapitalization processes so far? Do you think that there could be unintended consequences? And if the banks are able to do this by 2026, how do you think that it would impact the economy, Nigeria's economic recovery moving forward, especially as the banks have also been, you know, a lot of people don't have good things to say about the banks, that they're also part of our problems. Bills everywhere, you look, bills everywhere. If you put your money in fixed deposits, is going off. You don't, so there are a lot of issues around the banks.
Okay, in the first place, Nancy, I would say that most banks have been quite proactive in their recapitalization. Most banks are likely going to meet the new required minimum capital of 50 billion naira for regional banks, 200 billion naira for national banks, and 500 billion naira for international banks operating international that have international operation. We have been involved in a number of the offers as issuing house financial advisors. So I'm speaking from experience and from practical knowledge going on. Many of the banks are going to meet that. But even a bank decides not to go ahead and meet it, it has the opportunity to scale down. Take, for instance, a national bank that's unable to raise 200 billion. It can actually scale down to a regional bank. We have a history of banks who have done that in the past. Wema Bank scaled down to regional bank and then upscaled again back to national bank when it met the capital requirement of national bank. So in terms of the impact on the economy, well, when the banks finish their recapitalization, they're going to have a lot more liquidity to play around with, which will increase their single obligor limit, which means the tickets of the loans will increase. The single ticket the bank can lend out will increase.
Anyway.
It will improve the capital adequacy ratio. Ordinarily, it should, I use the word ordinarily, it does not follow automatically. It should improve their ability to intermediate in the economy.
Okay, let's hope so. Let's hope so. Mr. Chukwu, I want us to end this interview with a new report. I don't know if you've seen it. The new report by More Africa, it's trended over the weekend, claiming that Lagos men in Lagos State have spent a staggering 661 billion naira on sex in 2024. You've heard what I've said. This might sound like a sensational headline, of course, but what economic implications, if any, can we really derive from this kind of spending behavior? That's one. Around the reports too, there's the trend on spending on non-essential items. In fact, I had to look at the report, and I don't know if my team is just putting that on. Let me see if I can get a few data from it. 329 billion naira spent on hiring sex workers, that's the runs girls. And out of that 329 billion naira, we have about 93 billion naira spent on beauty and personal care, 62 billion spent on family obligations. That's these runs girls are taking monies from there and supporting their families. 46 billion spent on business ventures, 15 billion spent on health and education. What can you make from this trend? I agree it's a sensational headline, but economically speaking, what can we derive from it? Especially as NBS said a couple of weeks ago that it will rebase the GDP and perhaps get this underground economy inside, because a lot is happening. Close to 1 trillion naira spent on sex in Lagos State. They should come to Abuja and do that. I'm interested.
Nancy, it's the wrong question to ask a pastor. So
you're an economist by profession. What does this trend mean?
I have closed my ears temporarily when you were asking your question. But the
are you pleading the fifth? Just go ahead and answer my question as an economist. I'm not asking you as a pastor.
Okay. We should not glamorize evil. And what I mean by we shouldn't glamorize evil, there is what we call underground economy everywhere in the world. No country in the world will project it and make it glamorous. And that is why in places like America, if you are a socialite, if you're a public figure, if you go and hire a call girl, they will ask you to resign. If you are a sportsman or a sportswoman and you are being used as a brand ambassador, and you get involved in such illicit activities, the brand that are sponsoring you will withdraw their sponsorship. I think that publication is in bad taste. What they are trying to say is that young girls, because of the economic difficulties we have in the country, should go into such illegal, unethical, and unreligious behavior, because from that they can support their families, they can do this and that. I don't think we should glamorize it.
Exactly.
For me, I didn't want to read it. I didn't want to dwell on it. It's just like coming to say, look, this is the amount of money you made from cocaine, and if you go to so and so cities, so many houses have been built from cocaine trade. And then what do you want to do? A young man who has no income. So if I go into this crime, I could actually make money and go and build a house. Or you glamorize kidnapping and say, look, so much money is made from kidnapping, and from these kidnapping activities, wealth has been transferred. So I think we must call a spade a spade. It's a report for me that is of bad taste. It glamorizes criminal activity, and particularly the country where a lot of people are going through difficulties. You want to incentivize them to go into such unethical and unprofitable activities.
Mr. Chukwu, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. Of course, you said we shouldn't glamorize evil. So many things, because when I also read that report, so many things, perhaps I'll dissect them later, but a cause for concern also that values are being eroded in the country and a whole lot is happening. Parents are now leaving their children to do all sorts and all of that. But I'm also looking at it from the economic perspective, if government also should be concerned about that. And this sex is about sex outside marriage. That's what it is. We need to put it out there. But Mr. Chukwu, we'll talk again sometime soon. Let's leave it at that for today. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. All
right, I've been speaking with Johnson Chukwu, who is the founder and group managing director at Cowry Asset Management. That's the show for today. Thank you all for joining us. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be. I'm going to change that you want to see. Thank you for making it up to this minute, watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information. This is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.